Friends, today we are going to talk about a mind-blowing story that I found on the internet. In this story, there is a famous singer from Kuwait. Many people have talked about this incident, and in fact, a police complaint was also filed about it. This incident was so scary that after it happened, the whole country started living in fear. The woman I'm talking about was one of the top singers in Kuwait, but today she has completely stopped singing. Why she did that, you will understand after hearing this story. So, the singer we are talking about is Nora, and this whole incident happened in 1997. Nora was very famous in Kuwait for her singing. Her voice was so beautiful that it felt like even the dead could wake up hearing it. She had her own band group and they used to perform at weddings. In Kuwait, singers are invited to weddings and are treated with a lot of respect. In fact, weddings there feel special because of the singers. They create the whole vibe and atmosphere. That's why Nora was invited to many weddings to spread her magic. Now, one summer night, Nora returned home after performing at a wedding. She was very tired and just wanted to rest, but suddenly her landline phone rang. At that time, there were no mobile phones, only landlines. Nora picked up the call, and on the other side, there was a man speaking in very classical Arabic. Even at that time, speaking such pure, old-style Arabic was rare. It's like today we speak English, but not very pure, classical English, right? So if someone suddenly speaks very old, pure English, we feel strange. Nora felt the same. She asked the man where he learned such perfect Arabic. The man replied, "I didn't learn it, I just know it." Nora thought maybe the man was very old or just had a deep interest in classical Arabic. Then the man told her that his daughter's wedding was coming up and he wanted to invite Nora and her band to perform. Nora checked her schedule and luckily she was free on that day. Then they talked about money and the man offered her a huge amount, almost 10 times more than what she usually charged. Nora was shocked and thought this must be a very rich person, so she agreed. After that, the man sent her the address of the wedding location, but the location was far away from the main city, almost 20 to 30 kilometers outside. He told her to come to a water tower at the edge of the city, and from there his driver would pick them up and take them to the destination. Nora didn't think much and agreed. Within the next 2 days, she received an envelope with all the money in advance. For the next few weeks, Nora and her crew practiced songs, classical, traditional, and popular ones. Her team included Layla, who played the oud, which is similar to a guitar, Mariam on drums, Fatima and Sarah as backup singers, and Aslam, who handled all the equipment. They had been working together for 7 years and had a very good reputation. Finally, the day came and they all left for the wedding. They reached the water tower at the edge of the city, just like the man had told them. There, 2 cars were waiting. They all got into the cars with their instruments, and slowly the cars started moving towards the desert. As time passed, the city lights disappeared and they were surrounded by darkness. It was night and only the moonlight guided them. There was nothing around, just sand, silence, and the 2 cars. The only thing visible was 1 car in front and 1 behind. That's it. They had been traveling for almost an hour when they saw a man standing ahead in traditional Arabic clothes. He signaled them to come forward and then he sat in his car and started driving ahead. The cars in which Nora and her crew were sitting began following his car through the desert. After traveling for almost another half an hour, they finally reached a place where a huge mansion stood in front of them. This mansion was massive, much bigger than any mansion Nora had ever seen in Kuwait, easily 2 to 3 times larger. It was fully lit up, glowing with lights and beautifully decorated. Nora and her crew had no idea that such a grand and luxurious place could exist so far away from the city, in such an isolated area. They all stepped out of the cars and were just looking at the mansion in surprise when Nora turned back to thank the driver, but there was no one there. No cars, no drivers. Everything had disappeared. In the middle of the desert, those vehicles just vanished. Nora got confused and a little uneasy. Just then, a woman came out from inside the mansion. She was wearing a very old traditional dress, something that was rare to even find in modern times. She warmly welcomed Nora and her group and told them to follow her to the place where they would perform. They all went inside the mansion, and it felt more like a royal palace. The interior was decorated in a very old vintage style, as if they were following some ancient theme. As soon as they entered, Nora and her crew noticed a very strong smell of perfume in the air, so strong that it started giving them headaches. It felt heavy, like too much of anything becomes uncomfortable, and the same thing was happening here. Finally, they reached the performance area, which was right in the center of the mansion. There was no roof above. When they looked up, they could see the sky, stars, and the moon clearly. The woman showed them their stage and told them that the bride would arrive at midnight, so they should start performing, or at least warming up after 10:30. and before anyone could ask her anything, she suddenly disappeared. Nora and her crew started setting up their equipment and got ready. They changed into their performance outfits, red clothes with black hijabs covering their faces. Around 10 p.m. they did a quick sound check, but something felt off. Nora's voice started echoing in a strange way. Even though the space was huge and open, her voice kept bouncing back unnaturally. She thought maybe it was some technical issue and didn't pay much attention to it. After 10:30, guests started arriving, and this is where everything began to feel different. The entire vibe changed. People appeared in a very strange way. One moment the place was empty, and the next moment it was filled with people. Nora and her crew didn't even see them entering. It felt like they just appeared out of nowhere, like a glitch. Everyone was dressed similarly, women in traditional outfits and men in white dish dasha. Their way of entering was the most unsettling part. Some would suddenly walk out of a door, while others would just appear from behind corners. It was all very confusing, like what is even happening? Within 20 minutes, the entire courtyard was full, around 300 people or maybe even more. Nora had performed in front of larger crowds before, so she didn't feel nervous. She signaled her band, and they started with a traditional welcome song. The crowd reacted instantly. They began dancing, cheering, and the quiet atmosphere suddenly turned into high energy. But something still felt very wrong. At first, Nora couldn't understand what exactly was strange, but slowly she started noticing it. The way the crowd was dancing was not normal. Their body movements were weird, unnatural, and the scariest part, everyone was perfectly synchronized. If one person moved a certain way, dozens of people behind them did the exact same movement at the same time. Some twisted their necks too far, some moved their hands in very odd ways. It felt like they were all controlled by some invisible rhythm, like one command controlling all of them. By 11:30, these strange movements had increased so much that it became impossible to ignore. The way they were moving, it didn't feel human anymore. They didn't look human anymore. The way their joints were bending felt completely unnatural, like something was very wrong. They were dancing non-stop, no breaks, no breathing, no talking to each other like people normally do at weddings. Bass continuously dancing like they were hypnotized. It felt like some kind of ritual was going on, as if they were all given one single move and told to just repeat it again and again. The pattern they were following was so strange that it started giving Nora a headache. After some time, a few guests came near the stage to give tips and blessings, which is normal at weddings. One woman came and placed some money in Nora's hand, but the moment Nora touched her, her eyes widened. That woman's hands were extremely hot, so hot that it felt like touching burning coal. Nora didn't react, but when she looked at her backup singer beside her, her face had completely changed. She looked frozen, eyes wide open, mouth slightly open, hands shaking while holding the mic. Nora understood that she wasn't the only one feeling this strange vibe. Her entire crew could feel it. Nora quietly told her backup singer not to react and just keep performing, so they continued. The night started feeling longer and heavier. It was almost midnight now, and still the crowd kept dancing without stopping. Nora and her crew kept performing, but there was still no sign of the bride. Normally, people get tired after dancing for so long, right? Some would sit, some would rest, but here, no one stopped. In fact, they were dancing even faster now, even more synchronized. Nora's throat was burning badly. Imagine singing continuously for 4 to 5 hours without rest, without water. Her condition was exactly like that. Still, she didn't stop. She kept singing, as if all her practice was only for this moment. Beside her, Mariam was playing the drums like a machine. Her arms were moving in a perfect loop, not missing a single beat, but her jaw had tightened so much that it looked like it could break any second. Then, sometime after midnight, Nora couldn't even remember the exact time. Everything changed. Suddenly, smoke started spreading everywhere. At first, Nora thought maybe it was from fireworks or something. Maybe it was from fireworks or something like that, you know, like crackers. But what she saw next made her realize this was not normal, not at all. Gosh, she had never seen it. As the smoke cleared a little, Nora noticed something horrifying. The legs of the guests were no longer human. From below, they looked completely different, like hooves, black, cracked like goat or sheep legs, and they were dancing on those hooves with wild, animal-like madness. When they raised their hands, their fingers stretched unnaturally long, and their nails looked sharp, almost like claws or horns. But the most disturbing part was their faces. Their faces were still human. Same smiles, same expressions, but their bodies were slowly turning inhuman, and still they were all doing the same thing, dancing. Sarah's voice suddenly cracked in the middle of the performance. After seeing all this, she couldn't sing anymore. She just stood there, frozen frozen, eyes wide, mouth open in shock. At the soundboard, Hassan's face had turned pale grey like he could faint at any moment. At this point, only Nora, Layla, Mariam and Fatima were still performing, and that too just because of muscle memory and discipline. Their minds were completely blank with fear, but their bodies were still following the routine. Down below, nothing about those guests felt normal anymore. They didn't care that the performers were tired or terrified. In fact, they started dancing even harder, their movements going further beyond human limits. Nora kept singing. Her voice started breaking, tears rolled down her face, ruining her makeup completely. The others somehow kept playing their instruments as if their courage was hanging by a thin thread. Time had lost all meaning. Every song felt like it lasted forever. Nora's world had shrunk to just the next note, the next breath, the next second. She was only trying to control herself, not to faint, not to scream, not to draw attention to herself. And then, when she somehow looked at the clock, it showed 3 a.m. And the moment it turned 3, suddenly, all the lights in the mansion went off. And in the very next moment, all the lights went off at once. Everything turned completely dark. So dark that you couldn't even see the person standing next to you. There were no street lights, no nearby light source, and even the moonlight that night was very low. Nora couldn't even see her own hand in front of her face. The music didn't stop slowly. It just ended suddenly. Complete silence. The crowd that was dancing just seconds ago. There was no sound of breathing, no talking, nothing. The only thing that could be heard was the soft sound of clothes moving, like when fabric brushes against itself. That faint sound echoed in the darkness. The same courtyard that was full of high-energy dancing suddenly turned into dead silence. Yalla yalla, these were Layla's words, cutting through the silence. It means, come on, hurry, and you say it when you need to get out of a place quickly. And the moment they heard it, Nora and her crew ran. They left everything behind, their sound system, their instruments, everything. Fast, they just ran blindly in the dark. While running, Nora's heel got stuck in the carpet, so she quickly removed her shoes and continued running barefoot. The mansion felt endless, like it had no exit. They kept running from one room to another, then another, then another. There were so many rooms, all looking meaningless, confusing, like a maze. But they didn't stop. They just kept running. And finally, they managed to get out of the mansion. The same desert that earlier felt scary now felt like freedom. Open space, stars in the sky, and far away, the faint lights of Kuwait City showing them the direction of home. They ran towards their cars, shaking with fear, and suddenly they saw the same 2 cars that had brought them there from the water tower. The drivers were also there, as if nothing had happened. Without wasting a second, they jumped into the cars and told the drivers to take them back immediately. The drivers started driving fast towards the water tower. As soon as Nora and her crew began seeing the lights of the city again, and some people around, Nora realized that they were finally back in their world. They didn't stop, didn't look back even once. Only when they reached a petrol station on the outskirts of the city did they finally stop, and that too because the sun had started rising. The sunlight gave them a little courage. Nora and her crew just kept looking at each other. Everyone was exhausted, terrified. The fear in their eyes was so clear, like they had just seen death itself, but no one spoke about what happened. No one asked anything. Everyone stayed silent. The next day, Nora went to the police station and filed a complaint. She told them everything, how she was called, how they went there, what they saw. The police listened carefully. Then Nora gave them the exact location of the mansion. And this is where things got even more strange. A police officer went with Nora to that place. The water tower was there, just like before, but when they went deeper into the desert, there was no mansion. Nothing at all, only sand. The tire marks from the previous night were still there, but the mansion itself was completely gone. The officer told Nora that maybe someone played a prank on her, or maybe she was too tired after performing and imagined everything. But Nora knew the truth. What happened that night was real. Not just her entire crew experienced it, but without any proof, she couldn't convince anyone. So she let the officer leave and returned home. The next day, Nora went to a library to search for answers. She checked many books, articles and records, and finally she found something shocking. There really was a mansion in that desert once, a huge one, but it was last used in 1987, and after that it turned into ruins and was eventually eventually demolished. After learning this, Nora went home and tried to contact the man who had called her, the one who said it was his daughter's wedding. She called again and again, but there was no response. Even the courier company that delivered the money had no record of that envelope. It was as if none of it had ever happened, like that entire night never existed. After that incident, Nora never performed at a wedding again. In fact, not just weddings, she completely stopped singing forever. At that time, she was around 35 years old and was at the peak of her career. People kept asking her, "Why did you stop performing? Why don't you sing anymore?" But she always gave different excuses. Sometimes she said she wanted to spend time with family. Sometimes she said her schedule was too busy, and sometimes something else. But the people who were close to her understood that something was wrong. Something had happened to her, because leaving singing at that level, at that success, made no sense at all. Still, the people close to her didn't pressure her. But as you know, stories spread. Kuwait is a small place, and slowly this story started circulating. Every time someone told it, it became bigger and more dramatic. Some people said she saw ghosts at a wedding, while others said she was lying just for attention. But those who truly knew Nora understood one thing: she didn't need to lie for attention. At that time, she already had more attention than anyone else, so what would she gain by making up such a story? In Islamic belief, there are beings called Jinn. They are real entities made from fire, living alongside humans, and they can take different forms. These are not like the genie from Aladdin who comes out of a lamp. These are proper beings with their own existence, families and rules. They live among us, following their own world and system. Sometimes, by mistake, their world and our world collide, and when that happens, there are certain rules. If Jinn invite you or show you respect, you are supposed to stay calm, accept their hospitality, and not leave suddenly. You cannot offend them, you cannot show fear, and you cannot run away. You have to wait. Wait for their permission. Only when they allow you, you can leave safely. But if you anger them, or show that you know who they are, or try to escape in fear, then something bad can happen. Maybe something like this happened with Nora. Somewhere she had already started understanding what was going on, but she didn't panic. She didn't run immediately. She kept singing, kept performing until the right moment came, and maybe that's why she was able to return home safely. And that's where Nora's story ends. This story is very popular in Kuwait and is slowly spreading around the world. So what do you think? Was Nora's story real, or was it just something she made up for attention? You can share your thoughts. That's it for today. See you in the next story.